So I'll go ahead and just, Molly, you go ahead and kick us off. I'll move the slides and I'll let Tom do his introductions and then we'll dig right in.
Okay, recording started. So Tom, it's all yours.
Okay, welcome everyone to Demystifying Infor Delivered Process Flows. We have the Arden Varney as our main presenter today. Before we get started, for those of you who are not familiar with our organization, Bales and Associates, or should I say Nordic Bales, I thought I'd just spend a quick 30 seconds or so giving you an overview of our company. Bales was founded by Jamie Bales way back in 1995, and I believe Jamie is actually joining us today. So welcome, Jamie. We've been part of the Infor partner community for a very long time, since 1997. And basically, we are a full-service Infor implementation partner. Do full human capital management, supply chain finance, as well as technology consulting and so forth. Basically, having been around the Infor Lawson space for such a long time, we do have some deep roots with Infor and as our partnership, and basically have spent a lot of time doing implementations as well as working with Infor and training, building training classes, even training other Infor partners. Having that experience, needless to say, the average tenure of our consultants is about 15 years, probably 15, maybe closer to 20 years. We are a subsidiary of Nordic Consulting. What that means to us, particularly in the healthcare space, is that Nordic is a firm that was founded back in, I guess, around 2012, 2013, specializing in EMR, EHR, staffing, and consulting. That allows us to reach over the aisle, if you will, and reach out and have their expertise in the areas for Epic and Meditech and certain EMRs and EHR. So whenever we need to integrate things like supply chain or integrate patient accounting information with your Infor ERP, we've got the specific expertise to handle that. So it basically means it's a nice differentiator for us compared to the other partners. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Arden. But quickly before I do, just want to make a note that today's session is going to be recorded, and a link will be available. So we've got to get Arden's YouTube numbers up after we're done recording this. And then if you would like a copy of the recording or you want the link, just reach out to Molly Velasco at molly.velasco@balesllc.com and she'll help you out. So with all that said, I'll turn it over to Arden.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes?
Yes. Yep.
I'll take that as a yes. Okay, so just before we jump in, a quick introduction on my part. So again, my name is Arden Varney. I've been in the Infor space for a long, long time, since the early 90s. I was a client. I implemented version 6 as a finance consultant, and more dangerously as a payroll. I did a payroll implementation, which for any of the Bales folks on this call, they like to laugh at my skills within the payroll module, but I'm a finance guy. And again, I worked with a client from the mid 90s, 94 to 96, did our own implementation of Lawson at the time, version 6. I liked the product so much that I went to work for Lawson from 96 to 99. I met Jamie in 99, and I've been with her ever since. And I think that's like Tom said, you know, that's where you get this 15 years worth of our consulting experience. We have a lot of people that have been here for a long, long time. So today we're going to be covering Infor Process Flows. So let me do a couple of disclaimers first. So information provided in this presentation is related to implementing/upgrading Infor FSM, HCM. Again, you're going to hear it sometimes. I might slip and call it Cloud Suite. A lot of my folks get on me about that because, again, I like the Cloud Suite name, but it's technically known as FSM on the finance and supply chain. Some people also call it V11. Material information is considered for general information purposes only. If you do anything blindly that I tell you to do, don't do that. you should take a few minutes and think, okay, I understood what Arden said here today, but I'm going to take it with a grain of salt and I'm going to go do my own research and I'm going to learn. I think pretty much what I'm going to present today is accurate and correct. But yeah, ask us questions, ask me questions, ask my tech team questions, because I want to make sure that you have all the information, the right way. Makes no representations or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the accuracy, reliability. Now, I like to think that I got this right, but there could be some pieces in here that maybe my team will call me out for and say, yeah, you got it all right, except for this one little piece. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Any reliance you place on such materials without consultation is therefore strictly at your own risk. I'm going to try to point this out as I go along. And it's highly recommended that you contact Bales and Associates to make sure the solutions are tailored specifically to your needs. That's the one I really want you to focus on. We have folks that have been doing this for a long, long time. The material that I'm covering here today, you're going to see in a minute, it's somewhat new to me. It's still somewhat new to me. And I had to reach out to my tech team, to some of my other consultants to kind of get me over the hump to really understand what it is we're going to talk about today. But I think you'll enjoy it. I think for those of you that really haven't dabbled in anything IPA process flow oriented, that's kind of the goal today. Demystify it. Let's figure out what it is that, how can I use this thing to make my life a little bit better in the Infor FSM HCM worlds. So what are we going to cover today? So, about a month ago, Molly was asking us for recommendations. What do you guys want to cover in your next Informative Friday? And so on the finance and supply chain side, we have to come up with some ideas. One of the ideas was from Stephen Sinisi, one of our system architects, and he's a fantastic resource, knows a ton about the product. He implemented or knew the old version and has converted over to the FSM world. He knows the application really, really well. And he probably forgets more than he knows about V10, V9 today. He's moved over to the new world. That's what that's what everyone's trying to get me to do. That's what we're trying to get some of our clients who are out there on the older versions come up to the new world with us today. So Stephen mentioned, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you talk about what, some of these predefined process flows that are already out there? I said, hey, that sounds like a great idea. So we worked on a little bit of the material together, and then he said, oh yeah, on that Friday, when the presentation, when it comes time for the presentation, I'm going to be at a client, I'm going to be flying back, so I can't do it. I said, okay, I guess I'll try it. So you got me today. And hopefully I'll be able to, like I said, walk you through this in a way that you can at least kind of understand. So we're going to cover pre-delivered process flows, pre-delivered Infor process flows. So this is not a session on how to create process flows from scratch. I've got technical guys, Robert Schmidt, Jared Brock, guys who really, really know this tool really, really well. That's not what this is today. This is basically taking what Infor has already handed to us in FSM, in HCM, and being able to take that and walk through and start figuring out how to deal with your process flows. In FSM and HCM, Infor has created a whole bunch of process flows for you to use right out of the box. These are the ones that we're going to look at, the ones that are already here, the ones that I can basically start to use right out of the box. Infor has this phrase that we're trying to get along to clients, which is TTV, time to value. I think this is one of those areas where you can get a lot of value out of your upgrade or out of your new implementation of FSM and HCM really, really quickly. These automations, these process flows are really, really powerful. And like I said, a whole bunch of them are basically templates. Here, go ahead and start using them. Note, as I keep saying, I'm a functional consultant. I do not program. I ask our fantastic technical team to do the complicated stuff. So I'm a CPA. I'm pretty good with Microsoft Excel. Can I program any of these things that we're going to take a look at today? Absolutely not. But I know the right questions to ask. I can kind of tell what these things are doing. And I can set up some of the basic ones even myself and turn them on and get them to do some basic process flows. Basic processing. And if I've got something more complicated, I'm going to my technical team. So we're going to take the walk before you run. So again, today we're going to take a look at the existing ones out there. With IPA, you can basically do anything. Yes, anything. I've seen some amazingly complex, complicated flows. Again, that's not what we're doing here today. But if you take the mantra of, okay, we're going to walk before we run. Let's start off with these things, get up to speed, and then, yeah, hit the ground running, and you can really do some amazing things with process flow. But we're going to start with the pre-developed ones. So old world, I'm going to say V9, V10 versus new world. And again, I still kind of come from that V9, V10 world. I know those applications still really well. I still know all the form numbers off the top of my head. For anybody that's come into the new world, FSM, I got Casey Burge on the call, who she came to us. She's a fantastic supply chain consultant. She never really got involved with the V10 and V9 world. So anytime I throw out a form number, she's like, what is that? What is form number? I'm like, form numbers, they're great. And no, we're going to the new world. So in the old world, I'm gonna use the analogy of IPA was separate. It kind of sat bolted onto the side of V9 and V10. All I knew, I never paid any attention to it. I just thought, when I go into V9, V10, I see these things called workflows. I see I can have a journal entry approval. Nah, I don't need that. I'm just going to send it. If I need to approve a journal entry, I'm going to send an email to my boss and say, hey, can you approve this? It's over $100,000. Can you approve this? And just send me an email approving it. And I get an email back, and that goes into my inbox or into my filing system, and it's gone forever. Nobody's paying attention to it. Now, I did have clients that would use IPA, but it's pretty much, well, okay, I need this particular process. I'm going to go to one of my technical guys and say, can you figure out how to do this? I can tell you kind of what it needs to do, and you program it and you maintain it, and we'll kind of go from there. But it was separate. It wasn't really, it was kind of bolted onto the side of the product. In the new world, it's baked in. It kind of is all there. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that where I don't have to do any programming. I don't have to go to my tech team and say, hey, can you add an invoice approval, or can you add a new vendor process and put it into the menu and put it into the product? No, it's already there. And again, we're going to give you some examples of that here. So what is it? What is Infor Process Automation in general? All right, you can go back and read this, but it's a business modeling software that's an enhanced tool for automating business processes. Infor Process Designer allows users to graphically define a process. Okay, great. Great, what does that mean? Okay, yeah, you used a lot of words there. What does it mean? IPA automates stuff. Okay, yeah, okay, great. What does that mean? All right, so let's use an example. The example I have, I'm hoping that you will think it was absolutely hilarious, because as I was coming up with this example, I was literally up here at my desk laughing. My wife came up, who used to work for Infor, and that's where I met my lovely wife 25 years ago, coming up on 25 years. And she came up and looked over my shoulder. She said, that's kind of stupid. Are you really going to use that example? I said, yes, I'm going to use this example, and I hope you can all appreciate it. So you ready? I'm preparing. It's too bad you don't have all your microphones on, because I just want to hear all the laughing today. So, oh, wait a minute, before we get to the example. So what are we covering? Where are these process flows? Where are they? So if you go into your application, go to Process Server Administrator, and again, you may or may not have access to this depending upon your security. Configuration, process definitions, application defined processes, things that Infor has already put out there for me. So if I go to that form, here I can see, look at all of these individuals, like right out of the box: cash forecast approval, cash ledger approval, close approval. There's hundreds of these. Not just on the FSM side. Forget about the HCM side. Nikki Kimball, I had Nikki, one of our HCM consultants, send me a list on her side. I'm like, oh God, my God, there's too many. I can't show them all. So I'm just showing a smattering here. And if I go to, are any of these really good? Yes. When I first saw them, I'm like, all right, what am I going to use these for? Are these just going to be like a basic template and there's really nothing good out here? No, I'm going to show you a handful of these. So let's filter on some of the approval flows. So if you need, look at right here, I got invoice approval, item approval, I've got a purchase order approval, I got requisition approval. These again, are right out of the gate. There's a couple of things we're going to have to tweak to make them work in a basic form. But they're literally right out of the box. And again, color me skeptical. The first time I saw a handful of these, I looked, I'm like, yeah, but I'm sure I got to go in and do a whole lot of stuff to make this work. No, I really didn't. I called a handful of folks on my team and said, okay, if I flip this on and flip this on, we have tons and tons of documentation already about how to A, not only turn these on, but B, how to tweak some of them and make them even better. But straight out of the box, this is a great way to take a look. Okay, so again, I just filtered on my approval and all these individually processes about the approval process flowed in. So this is my 100% accurate depiction of what I remember and how I remember having to add a vendor in V10 or V9. And this is before process flow. This is, like I said, 100% accurate. And I want you to pay attention to pictures because this is what we used to have to do. This is the same type of phone that we used to have to do. So here's my lady friend who she's requesting a vendor, and she needs to order a gramophone. Now, for those of you before the iPhone days, yeah, we usually used to have to actually take a physical piece of plastic and put it onto a record player and get it to play. So she would call her friend over in the accounts payable department and say, hey, I need a new vendor. I need it right now. Lickety split. Give me a vendor. And the guy on the other end of the phone, all right, hold your horses, sister. I need paperwork. You got to send me approvals. I need all this stuff before I'll even plan to set up your vendor. Okay, great. They go back and forth hours and hours later. And step number 47, I got my new vendor in AP10. Everybody remember AP10? AP10, yes, that's your vendor screen. So I would literally, again, emails back and forth, phone calls back and forth, in order to just do something as simple as setting up a vendor. So is there something better in FSM? Can I still do it manually? Of course I can still do it manually. I can still make a phone call, make sure the person, my accounts payable manager has access to set up new vendors, add new vendors, etc. But wouldn't it be nice if somebody could request something from me and a process in Infor would trigger to start a flow and to keep track of it? Yeah, I'd rather do that. I'd rather do that than all the phone calls. So in FSM, utilize a pre-delivered IPA or a process flow. From the manage vendor form in FSM, look under the ellipsis. So it's right here. When I go to manage vendors, right next to the vendor button, I've got this little ellipsis, and ellipses are everywhere in FSM, HCM, etc. So if I drop down on that little ellipsis, I come to create, and I've got an option for request new vendor. I didn't have to do anything to have this available to me. It just showed up. Now there's a couple things I have to turn on to make sure that this flow will work, but it's there. It's already there. A basic process flow to do a new vendor request. So I click on the ellipsis, create, request new vendor. Okay, boom. Now I'm going to get a new form. And then the requester can fill out most of the information needed to create the new vendor. The request will be routed to the approver, and if everything is shipshape, your vendor's ready. So again, this is what the form looks like. I can put in attachments. The more information that this person can fill out on the front end, the less work for the person who's in AP, because they can just go in and look at this and say, okay, I've got a main field, I got my company defaults, contact information, address, what's the priority, when do I need this by? My tax ID information. I can throw attachments in here if I've got, tax information. Whoops, if I've got tax information that I need. And again, I didn't have to have my technical team go out and do this. It exists. I'm going to show you where in a minute here, but it's just here. It's just here. I keep saying that because I'm astonished that it's here. I don't have to do much to make this work. Okay. Not only, now I just showed you where it exists over in the vendor side, right? So that's over on accounts payable. I've got this FSM new vendor. Well, is it in other places? Yes. Request new vendor also exists with our best friends on the supply chain world. So if they're in purchase order and they're getting ready to set up a new purchase order, right here with my little red asterisk where I'm highlighted in yellow, I've got a vendor button. I click on that. And when I go to select a vendor, I can either pick an existing vendor, search for an existing vendor, or boom, right here, I've got in my little yellow there, highlighted in yellow, request new vendor. It's going to open up the same process. It's going to forward it over to my friends over on the accounts payable side to say, hey, I've got a new vendor. I need to set this up. Route it to my friends over on, or basically to either my friends on the AP side or whoever I tell it to route it to go approve this thing. Okay. So how is this possible? Infor did it. They did it. I don't want to say it's for free. It's included in your FSM HCM subscription. It's already there. Now, over the years that they've developed this, I mean, they keep adding new ones. They keep tweaking the ones that are already out, these predefined ones. Like I said, there's literally hundreds of these. So where is Process Server Administrator, Process Definitions, Application Defined Processes, Request New Vendor? So if I look at this, and it sets my hair on fire. I'm like, oh, wow, I kind of understand what's happening here as a functional person. I got to start. I've got some data here. I need to assign it. It's going to go to an approver. It's going to go back and forth. I've got all these arrows. Now, my technical team is saying, oh my God, Arden, you're so stupid. This is not that hard. Oh, maybe for them. Maybe for them it's not hard. But the point of this is, I didn't have to do anything. This came out of the box. It says right up here in this little red box, read only. So this means that I can take a look at this, kind of see how this flows. Some of them are more complicated than others. I'm going to take a look at one here in a minute that's pretty straightforward. But this is a request new vendor. And if I set up a couple of little pieces, like, okay, I have to set up who the approvers are, and I have to turn the service on to make sure that it's working and make sure your emails are set up. That's it. That's all I had to do in the background in order to turn this on and make it work. We're going to get into a minute as far as how you can customize these, modify it. But straight out of the box, if you're doing conference room pilot, if you're doing testing, if you're just like, hey, I just want to see how these things work. Maybe in your current V9, V10 environment, you're not using any of these. If you're migrating, if you're coming to Infor from another system like, oh God, what is it, Sage, and some of these older, general ledger or accounting systems or systems in general, you probably don't have a lot of this. But right out of the gate, I got a brand new, it's all set up and ready to go, and at least I can start playing with it. So what do I need to do to get these to work? Okay, great, Arden, you showed me all this stuff, but it's got to be super complicated. I can tell you it's not super complicated because with a couple of phone calls to some of my friends here at Bales, I was able to turn these on and get them to work pretty much by myself. Mark Borsheim, who I think is on this call, I called him up. I'm like, the first time I clicked on this, I got an error message. He's like, well, did you turn it on? I said, no. Where do I do that? And so he just navigated me to a point, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that says, okay, you just need to make sure that this service is turned on. Once it's turned on and you have got your components in, they work. They just work. I know I keep saying that, but they work. Sure, this all sounds great, but it's going to be super difficult to get this to work. No, it's not. There's prerequisites. We'd be happy to walk you through them. So here are some basics. And again, going back to that whole disclaimers thing, if I say anything wrong here, my technical guys are going to call me out. If you have any questions and you're on the phone and from a potential or current client, let me know and I'll get you in touch with the right person. Okay. First, make sure your service definition is enabled. This was the first thing that happened when I went to request a new vendor. I clicked on it and I got this error message that said something like, service is not enabled. And I panicked and I thought, oh, this is broken. I don't even know what I'm doing. Like I said, I called my friend Mark. Mark's like, well, is it turned on? Like, I don't know. Is it? How do I do that? So he walked me through within Process Server Administration, configuration, service definition. So even though I've got right here, this is request new asset. I'm gonna do an example of an asset here in a minute. And I need to have the service definition enabled, and I have to have a service process definition attached to it. So two things. I know it sounds a little convoluted, but literally this was a 2-minute exercise to say, oh, okay, I've got the service and I've got the process definitions and I tie them together and I turn it on. Did I have to go create any of these? No, they exist. I just need to turn them on, okay? And enable them. Right here, service is enabled, yes, I'm good to go. Make sure you have approvers set up. So in this particular case, great. I've got everything set up and turned on and it's ready to route stuff. It needs to know who to go to. If I ask for a new vendor, my friend in that slide up earlier, well, it's got to go somewhere when I make my request, and I need to have approvers set up. So in this case, and again, we're going to walk through here in a minute. I'm going to create a request a new asset. So I've got my old pal Chrissy Fry. She's an administrator, application consultant here at Bales. So I'm going to go to Process Server Administrator, back in that same group, configuration. Most of the stuff is under configuration, user configuration tasks. So here, I've got for my asset approver, this particular task, my approver to request a new asset. I've got several folks down here. I've got Alex, Chrissy, and Michael who are set up to be approvers for this. And again, literally, I just go in and I add a new right here. I add under my users. I'll add where my little plus button is, my add button is, and I'm going to set up Chrissy as an approver. And so long as she needs to be set up as an actor or a user within FSM, which she is already, and now she's ready to go. So if that request for new asset comes along, it's going to get routed or forwarded to her right away. Okay. Now let's request an asset. So I did the vendor before. I like dealing with assets because it's something I know. I know the asset management application pretty well. I knew it really, really well in V9, V10, V7, V8. I know it reasonably well in FSM. So I like to stick with what I know. I wasn't going to branch out and try to do something super complicated. And I wanted to try to do this myself. So I'm going to request a new asset. Within again, this whole ellipsis thing again. For our business, I need a new vehicle. I'm gonna go to Manage Assets, click on the ellipsis, and request new asset. So right here, request new asset, the ellipsis, and request new asset. Again, I didn't have to do anything here. Infor has this baked in already, which is great. And then I just have to turn the service on like I had indicated in the previous steps. So I'm going to, when I click on the request, I'm going to get a little box, kind of like what I had on the vendor. Remember on the vendor, I had, the information that I had to fill in for my accounts payable vendor. In this case, request new asset. Now, of course, the priority is high. I need this thing right away. When do I need to buy? 2/8. I have to know my asset company. So again, when you're doing this, it's not like you got to remember your audience. And in this particular case, in order to set up an asset, I have to be able to at least know a little bit about asset management before I can do this. And that's going to be a recurring theme here in a minute when we get into what do you need to know when you're building these things. So I need to buy 2/8. I needed to go to this particular company. I'm buying a 2023 Tesla Model S Plaid Edition, which is probably very appropriate for me and my business because, I need to indicate to my clients that, I'm a successful guy and I like to drive around the finest automobiles. So I'm going to get a Tesla Plaid Edition. My asset type, it's a luxury vehicle. I got luxury vehicles set up in my system. I should be allowed to buy this. And again, some other basic asset information here on the request new asset. I'm going to click on this little submit button, and then Infor is going to take this and do its magic. It's going to start routing this immediately over to Chrissy. So let's take a look at what happens next. So let me check on my status from Process Servers Administration. And again, I know there's multiple ways to get here, but I'm going to go to Process Server Administration, Work Units, work units, I can see my request. Now I know, I apologize for the screenshot here. I wanted to make this a little bit bigger, but I can see that I've got this particular work unit, so I can identify it. I've got my request new asset. It's a request new asset process, which we took a look at on the previous screen. It says here that the status is processing. And I'm at 1 minute, 51 seconds. So I put the request out there and then I ran over here and grabbed this screenshot right there. So it tells me, okay, what's happening here. It's already been 2 minutes, so my high priority means nothing to Chrissy. Obviously, she's just taking her sweet time. I got things to do. I need to buy this thing. Let's go, Chrissy. Come on, let's approve this thing for me. So if I double click on the work unit, I can see some useful details. Let's focus on user actions. I can see that Chrissy has no sense of urgency here. So here, I'm down underneath my little work unit that I saw on the previous screen. I open it up and I've got all sorts of details about this particular thing that's in process. Now, my asset that's in process. User actions, I can see my final approver. It's action awaiting, still hasn't done anything. I'm waiting. I'm very excited to get this new car. So action awaiting. Now, let's see what Chrissy sees on her end. Now, in full disclosure, Chrissy got busy with a client on Wednesday. And I'm sitting here like, hey, can you approve this thing so I can put together my PowerPoint presentation? And I thought, shoot. All right, so I went out and I set up another approver and I routed it to Mark instead. So I went over Chrissy's head. I said, I can't do this by myself. I need Mark to approve it. I guess I could, in theory, approve my own, but I wanted Mark to approve it. So the screenshot's going to be a little fuzzy here, and I apologize. So over in Mark's side, when I made him an approver, what he sees is he's got his little in basket here, and he can see, okay, I've got a request for a new asset here. It came from me, Varney at Bales, and now he can click onto it or click into it and approve it, and he did. So once Mark has approved it, I'm going to get a couple of notifications. You always get them in that little notification bar up in FSM. I also got an asset. I also got an email. So I get an email reply, cloud notifications at infor.com. And again, these can be customized, but this is the basic one out of the box, didn't have to do anything. The request to add an asset with description 2003 Tesla Model S has been approved. So Mark approved it. I got an email, great. Nearly 3 hours later, okay, so again, this took a long time, and I've been sitting here waiting with my Tesla Model S. I got the browser open, Tesla's kind of awesome because you can just go in and click and buy a car. No negotiation, you just click in it. I guess it just shows up at your house. I get a bunch of people on the phone who own Teslas. It's probably not quite that simple, but it's probably pretty close. So I also see a new notification in FSM. So over here, my notifications, I see that I request new asset completed. Mark is red. Yes, it's today. Everything's good to go. Now, on my side, I still have a few things left to do. Again, this is where it comes into knowing the application. When I requested an asset, did it just automatically set up an asset? No, because there's a couple of additional pieces. I have to tell it how much it costs. I have to tell, I have to give it depreciation methods. I have to do all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit more complicated. I still have to know the application. It didn't go in and just automatically create an asset for me. I don't know that I necessarily wanted to. I want some checks and balances and controls in here. I don't want everybody just running out there and saying, hey, give me a new car. Hey, give me a new piece of equipment. But like I said, this was kind of my easiest sample here. And like I just said, finish it up in asset management so I can continue on in asset management. I have a unreleased asset sitting right here, my 2023 Tesla Plaid edition. And I'm going to go in, do my normal setup. Everything's good. And now I've got an asset here for my Plaid Edition Tesla. I got my nice little picture here, and my asset is ready to go. Okay. So again, I didn't have to do any programming. I just had to turn the service on, attach a couple of approvers, and once that's good to go, I can do a whole process and let Infor do the heavy lifting for me. And again, the great thing about this, I've got documentation everywhere. I've got history attached to this. It's not like if I did that whole request with the I was kind of joking around about the accounts payable request, the vendor request. literally kind of emails floating back and forth, email attachments, etc. I can put it all in here. I can put it all in my system and not have and have all the history associated with this process right here in Infor. Okay, that's great. Now what? Now again, first of all, don't hesitate to reach out to your friends here at Bale/Nordic. We've done this a bunch of times. We've taken some of the existing flows and modified them. I think I can think about like invoice approval. There's a basic flow for invoice approval out of the box. It's not super helpful. It's one of the ones where it's like, okay, you're going to need to add a few levels of approvers. Like I wanted somebody to approve everything that's over $5,000, everything, or and then a different level of approval if it's a invoice over 25,000, 100,000, etc. That's a little bit out of range for what the basic flow will do. But have we tweaked those? Absolutely. And it's better to take an existing flow, copy it, and modify it than to start from scratch. So play around with these in your test environment. In your test environment, please don't just run into prod and start turning these off, turning these on. I'd be fine with that, but that's just me. I would not recommend that. Look at the flows as we showed above in slide 12. Pay attention to how the overall flows work. Do your homework. And again, ask us for help. We've done this a bunch of times, so we have a lot of documentation on this, both functional and technical. So determine which of these flows could work straight out of the box. I can make the argument, and I think my team will back me up. There's a handful that really, if you just turn them on, add some approvers, some of these would work straight out of the box. It would take you 5 minutes to set up a flow. You obviously want some documentation around it, but some of these will work straight out of the box. Determine which of these flows could work, but with some minor tweaks. Then maybe it's something that you guys would feel comfortable enough as a client, working on these or being able to do these by yourself. Determine which predefined flows could be used as a template for more complicated flows. So just like I was giving you the example about the invoice approval process. Yes, you can copy an existing flow. So if you had the existing process flow for invoice approval, but it's like, well, wait a minute, the approval levels in here aren't right, or I need to route this a little bit differently. Great, we don't have to start from scratch on that. Our technical team, at least I think Jared promised me this, they could take an existing flow, copy it, and start modifying it, right? Don't touch the existing ones. I don't even know if you can. Some of these say read only. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a way to go in and touch an existing flow. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's one of my main caveats today. Don't touch the existing ones. Copy it, and work with it from there. Yeah, right here. We never would recommend changing a predefined flow. Copy it, then modify the copy. Okay. Also, if you're going to do any type of tweaks to these, you need Infor Process Designer client tool to create or modify the flows. So it is a separate tool that you're going to need to be able to dig in and program these things or configure them. But just so that you know, you have to have that. Could I do that? No. Would anybody want me to? No. I'm gonna leave that up to my super powerful tech team to do. I'm not going to do that. Or better, ask us, like, what have you seen? Like, hey guys, we've seen, I've got this list of, 200 flows out of the box. Tell me which ones do you think I could use out of the box? Which one needs some minor tweaks, and which ones do I need a lot of help with? Or maybe which ones do I need to create from scratch? Maybe Infor doesn't have a solution for something in particular, but you'd like to go ahead and just create one from scratch. We do that all the time, not me, our technical team. Remember, the flow is only as good as your existing processes and procedures. So, we run into this all the time where a client will come to us and say, hey, yeah, I just add vendors and someone over in accounts payable does it, and we just add them whenever we get asked. And that's fine, but you should probably have a process and a procedure around it. And some of the stuff within Infor Process Flow is going to kind of force some of those decisions. So the more that you know your processes, if we came to you and said, great, we want to build these invoice approvals. What are your invoice approval levels? We're not going to determine that for you. You're going to tell us. You're going to say, well, okay, if it's over 5,000, it goes to this person. If it's over 10,000, this person. Over 100,000 goes to this person. Great. And we can set that up, tie it into people's roles, securities, et cetera, to make sure that those things get routed properly. Okay. So as part of your implementation upgrade, you want to make sure that your policies, procedures can map to flow. What do I mean by that? So here's the request asset, the one that I just did for request asset was really simple, okay? So when I pull that up and take a look at what the process flow is, it kind of goes in a straight line, right? There's not a whole lot going on here, which is right up my alley. I like things that are simple. So I'm just kind of requesting a simple asset. Is it approved or rejected? And then create an asset. So it's just kind of going in a straight line, pretty easy. Okay, yeah, this is easy. Do I need a whole lot of help on modifying or customizing or configuring? I shouldn't say the word customize, configuring this one. No, this one's pretty straightforward. Want to look at something a little bit more complicated, journal entry approval. So back in the old days, again, to get journal entries approved, I worked with this at an old client of mine. Some of my consultants used to work for Bell's department stores, and they had lots of emails going back and forth with journal entry approvals and journal entry spreadsheets saved off and in certain folders. Well, again, Infor has a journal entry approval flow. So what's this look like? Now, this one looks a little more complicated than the last one I looked at. It's not a straight line. There's a lot of branches happening here. And you can see here, I've kind of highlighted, well, you've got something called an approval level. You've got something called a reason code. So when I went back to the initial one, I said, okay, I got to make sure the definition is turned on, or the process is turned on. I need to make sure I have some approvers. But now I'm introducing things like approval levels and reason codes. So you'd have to understand, well, where in the system do I set up an approval level? Where do I set up a reason code in order to make this thing work right? Okay, so it's not just as simple as turn it on and everything works right out of the box. Some of these are going to be a little bit more complicated. So for example, with if you want to, that should say use journal entry approvals, you have to set up approval levels. So there's a few pieces to that. Now, again, you need to understand your global ledger and how your global ledger is set up. But first, you have to create a team: financials, global ledger, setup, finance, enterprise groups, maintenance. So within my finance enterprise group, I have something called a team, and I've got various teams out here that are going to be used for various purposes as far as some of my approvals, routing, etc. So I have a team here, right here, kind of in the middle, that says journal approvers, and within that, right now, I think it's just Mark and Kathy Nystrom, two of our finance consultants. So again, just another piece that I have to set up, and then approval codes. So within approval codes, I've got this thing called a journal entry, a code, and then I have to tie in people who are, might have different various level approvals. Like maybe Steve can only approve everything that's over 10,000 and Lisa can approve everything. It has to go to Lisa if it's over 50,000. So again, I have to understand the application a little bit to understand where is this stuff coming from. I can't just necessarily go in and turn everything on and expect it to all work flawlessly. There are going to be some that are a little bit more complicated than others as far as, well, Arden just said I have to turn on the flow and it'll work. Yeah, not really. There's pieces that you have to turn on. There's approvers you got to set up. And then within your respective application, in this case, Global Ledger, I have to have some of these other pieces set up as well. And again, don't spin your wheels on this. Call us. We'll be happy to entertain a quick phone call to say, hey, yeah, okay, you want to do this? Let's talk about some of the things you're going to have to set up. Or again, if you said, well, this flow is kind of nice, but I've got 5 different levels of approval, and depending upon which division, which company, which department it's in, I need these things to get routed to different people. Can all that be set up? Absolutely. Is it going to be straight out of the box? No, but you could probably use something like your journal entry approval template flow to start you in the right direction. Okay, let's see, my approval codes. So where does all that setup get used? And again, on the journal entry form, approval code below. So all that setup that we just did, I've got this little approval code down here when I go ahead and create my journal entry. I would use that to kind of kick off my approval process. Okay, so again, just kind of showing you how this all kind of ties back into a general ledger form, for my journal entry form. Okay, so I went through pretty quickly. I I wanted to leave, okay, I'm at 1:45. I want to leave some time for questions. So I have not been monitoring the chat. I can't see anything. So Molly, I don't know if we've got any questions. I don't see any. Or if I've got anybody on the phone from my tech side, from any one of my consultants, if I said something or omitted something, feel free to jump in and clarify, give me my errors and omissions. Did I miss something, or is there some other thing that you'd like to kind of see?
This is Tawny. I would like to make the team aware that there is a new standard delivered request flow for any of your user dimensions.
Oh,
It
okay.
is a newly issued flow from Infor, and I've tested it. It works. Pretty cool.
Excellent. And to Tawny's point, yeah, these things are getting updated all the time. It's not like we just have this static list and this is all you're ever going to get. Infor gets requests from clients, from consultants, from folk, people like folks at Bales who say, it'd be nice if we had this, and it'll pop up, eventually as a new one. Tanya, do those come out during monthly releases, quarterly releases? Do they just kind of, how did you know that one just happened to pop in there?
I was reading the release notes.
Okay.
I don't know that they have a specific cadence to when they release them.
Gotcha. But again, to Tanya's point, the release notes are a big deal. We comb through, our team members comb through those like crazy when they first come out. And yeah, like Tanya just said, that one just happened to pop in as a brand new one. So they're adding these all the time. There's new ones coming in on a consistent basis. So Molly, I didn't see anything in the chat. I must have been super clear and explained everything in such a way that everybody understood it. Or I've got a bunch of technical guys on my team who are flabbergasted, and maybe I said something horribly wrong and they just don't want to call me out.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
Hey, Arden, it's Robert. Did you, I apologize, I wasn't able to make it at the beginning. Did you kind of cover over, some of the security? There is a little bit of security set up there for adding roles, getting to in baskets, kind of that kind of stuff.
No, I did not. I made it sound like, oh yeah, this is all just going to automatically work. I did talk about, adding users to approval levels and things like that. But yeah, if you just want to, I don't know if you can just, mention for, 5 minutes, like, okay, beyond the stuff like me turning the services on, what would be a couple of other prerequisites as far as in baskets, et cetera?
Yeah, so there are some security roles in IFS that'll need to be assigned, working within baskets, being able to process through those action requests. And then additionally, you'll probably want to do some look in process server administrator and process users to make sure that those in-basket assignments are done. And then if you are doing any sort of filtering or anything within the process server, that setup needs to be done there as well. So there is a little bit to be there. It's nothing overwhelming by any means. To Arden's point of understanding your process, your procedures, that design, having that laid out before getting into that does make it a little bit easier in order to kind of to walk through those pieces. But yeah, I just wanted to call that out.
No, and I'm glad you did, Robert, because the second, one of the second or third or fourth slides was all the disclaimers at the beginning, and I had to basically say, listen, I think I got most of this right, but if I didn't, someone from my team will call me out and make sure that I clarify. But yes, to Robert's point, I'm coming at it from a functional person, like, oh yeah, somebody like Robert, my tech guy, he already set all this stuff up, and I just have to turn it on and go. So my part is correct in that that's easy. But to Robert's point, yes, there's a little bit of prerequisite work to be done with your users, et cetera, to make sure that they can get to this kind of stuff, and my users are set up properly, et cetera. So yes, thanks, Robert. That's why I'm glad you're here. Keep me honest.
You betcha.
And
then
to add on to that, if you're an approver, you have to have a finance resource set up so that you show up to be able to be selected as an approver for that path to route to you.
Gotcha. And again, because when I was going in, like setting up people like Mark or Chrissy, all of that must have existed first, so that I could go and just say, oh, I'm just going to attach these onto these. Isn't this easy? I just have to add Mark. I just have to add Chrissy. So there is a little bit, like Tawny said too, there's a couple of other pieces in here too. But
So Arden, you do have one question in the chat now. Godwin was asking for on the new ones. I'm assuming the flows that Tanya mentioned, are they applied automatically?
so Tanya, can you answer that?
Yeah, sure. So no, just like any other standard flow, you have to go in and turn on the process or turn on the flow and activate the process. And then make sure you have approvers set up for that request to go to.
Good to know, because yeah, when I first came in, most everything was already turned on. The particular one that I was using was not. And that's when I got the error message and had to call Mark and say, what have I done wrong? And he's like, well, did you turn it on? Like, no. And then Mark showed me how to turn it on. I showed you just, again, it's in one of those slides earlier where we kind of enabled the process, right? So that's good to know, Tanya, that they come in and I still have to enable them. They don't come in enabled automatically.
Now, the one thing that
Infor,
you don't have to do is go request it from Infor. It did just show up in my services.
yeah, Infor will deliver those process and service definitions, especially in the multi-tenant cloud. Infor does not tend to overwrite existing flows. So if there was one of a previous version, they'll create a new definition within the environment. And to Tawny's point, you can go out and grab it. And just to tie in off Arden, a comment you made earlier, yes, you don't want to update an existing flow, because if Infor does release anything, all of your edits and tweaks and everything will go away. So copying and then recreating new user-defined definitions is your best path to take there to make those tweaks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the overall message I want to get across is, again, don't be afraid to use these things. Don't be afraid to call us and say, hey, I saw that there's a journal entry approval, an invoice approval, and I'm doing it manually now. And for some of my upgraders, they just want to run and hurry and get to the next level of the software as fast as they can. And they kind of forget that some of these are here. Same thing for my net new clients. It's like, well, I only have time to do this much to just kind of get the very basics up and running to start with, and this will be a good phase 1A to start turning some of these things on. Oh, let's see. Okay, so we did get one question. Are they only applied? It's just a question or a statement? It looks like it's a statement. They are only applied automatically to MT Cloud clients. Okay, so yes, multi-tenant. Yeah, I guess Tawny, Robert, I don't know if there's anything else. Yeah, statement. Thanks, Jerry. So they're only applied automatically with a multi-tenant. Yeah, so if you are still one of those folks that's on premise with the Cloud Suite or FSM or HM or V11, whatever we're calling it, yeah, you're not going to get those automatically. Good
Yeah,
point.
those are delivered in the CU. So if you're in that state of, single tenant on-prem or any of that, when you apply those CUs to your environment, that's when they would be delivered within your environment.
Gotcha. All right, so Molly, that's all I see so far. Did you want to jump in and talk about what we got coming up, or?
I'm turning that over to Tom.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Hey, great job, Arden, and the Bells team. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Arden, you underestimate yourself. You did a fantastic job. And I want to just thank everyone for joining us today. A couple of items before I let everyone go and enjoy your weekend. Our February series of Informative Fridays continues next Friday, the 17th. Inventory transactions impacting the general ledger. If you are interested, please register either on our website or shoot Molly Velasco an email. She'll get you registered for that. So hopefully you'll be interested in joining us. And lastly, who's got control of the slides? Oh, and sorry about that. February 24th is our final session in February. What to expect when moving from S3 to cloud in HR talent management. So please join us for those two remaining sessions this month. And the other thing I wanted to do was just talk about our coffee with consultants. Just make everyone aware that we called Coffee with Consultants. If you have any questions about what you saw today or anything that's specific to your usage of your Infor ERP system, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can contact us on our website, and what we'll do is set up a half-hour session, complimentary with one of our experienced consultants, one of our subject matter experts, and try and answer all your questions. Again, it's a complimentary offering, and we'd love to have you take advantage of that and kind of pick the brains of our subject matter experts on anything that might be issues for you. So other than that, I want to again thank everyone for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend. And thank you again to Arden and the Bales team that did a fantastic job.
Thanks, everybody. And again, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Arden.
Thanks, Arden. It was
Thank
entertaining.
you.